We are on the morning break in the questioning of Jon Boutcher at the undercover policing inquiry on the last day of hearings of this phase. Jon Boutcher is the current Chief Constable of the Police Service in Northern Ireland. He was the Detective Chief Superintendent in charge of the SDS, who ended up shutting down the unit. He started his evidence day by giving an apology. He claims that he was unaware of the sexual relationships, but he believes that the intrusive nature of the SDS was completely appalling and unjustifiable. He has been questioned at length about the guidelines, the regulations that existed around the unit. He's explained why he's disagreed with them. He says that he believes that the intrusive nature of undercover policing should have never been used against the political groups involved in public order. He comes from an anti-terrorism background and has worked in anti-terrorism significantly, including managing a lot of undercover deployments in the modern era. He tries to give the impression that essentially this is all a thing of the past, that it needed to be changed, and he changed it, and now the modern situation is absolutely safe and fine, no problem at all, and don't you worry. I'm not sure I'm really convinced by that. There was a section where there was a breach. We can't talk about what that was. I'm joined by Donald O'Driscoll of the Undercover Research Group. What did you make of what he had to say?
He's a cop.
Yes, very much.
He's definitely a very cop. In fact, so he said many comments, he's the most cop-looking cop. He'd be the AI cop, cop manager. Like yesterday, it's kind of refreshing to end this bit of the inquiry on somebody who understands full sentences and completes them and can give clear answers that don't require a word salad which you have to pick out the nice bits, or you actually, what are you trying to say? You use 15 words to say no. Is that really? He's very, very clear. I think you're right. He's trying to say a lot of things in the past. But I think the reasoning for that is, this really has tainted policing, particularly undercover policing. I think he, as a serving police officer, is very, very aware of that. And I think there's a real worry that we're going, if this is what undercover policing is, he's not going into how they've changed or thing, but it is quite interesting what he's saying about the new tech course, the National Undercover Training Accreditation course. It's just like there was a lot there. There was a lot to be learned. It wasn't acceptable that SDS were shunning that.
He talks a lot about the in-house training and how unsuitable it was. He even went through the guidelines. I disagree with that. That's wrong about certain topics like legal professional privilege. That's just wrong. He's directly contradicted things that Mike Dell has said about LPP, and that if it was fabricated, it was okay to report on it. He was like, that is not the case.
He's also clear that cops knew this. This is not a case of there just wasn't enough training. This is bread and butter stuff. It's quite clear, and it's a complete contrast. Every special branch officer who's convinced that the only training worth having was what their bosses in special branch told them, as if a police officer becomes a uniform cop before they go into special branch, and as if they just cut out that bit of the world. I'm no longer a uniform cop. None of those regulations apply to me. And I think that's one of the contexts here that. And I think he's conveying it quite well without actually coming out and saying it in a very political way. He's like unprofessional to a man. All of special branch.
He said that when he came in into his role, he researched the deployments of the undercover officers at the time, and he said he couldn't understand why the majority of them were deployed against the groups they were deployed against. And he has reiterated a number of times that he doesn't believe that protest groups, animal rights, environmentalism should have been subject to the intrusive undercover policing. He said there are less intrusive ways to get all the intelligence that was required about public order. He said that he said in a number of different ways, essentially, that he thinks that undercover policing should be reserved for these areas around international terrorism and all these other sort of more serious crime and so forth.
I think he more than anybody else has got the point that undercover policing is so intrusive. It has to have a really, really high bar. Now, I'm not ever going to justify undercover policing. I'm not going to justify it. But if you're going to look within their own systems, the bar is really high. And corollary to that is special branch treat that bar away, says we don't care. And it's coming across, they just were not applying any bar whatsoever. But he's like, he knows law. Says, no, new tech gave you the law that says this. He says he recognizes how intrusive. And he does touch on the point, I think, is not got near enough attention from the inquiry. In fact, they've deliberately run away from it.
Mm.
What were the alternatives to undercover policing? And like, we know there's phone tapping, we know there's way more informers than there were police. I don't think any of these are acceptable, but if you're going to work within that legal framework, they had a lot of alternatives. And the SDS, the special branch's position is, no, none of that worked. I didn't like that. And he's going, grow up, be adults. There was all this stuff, and you simply weren't considering it. So I think he's saying a lot, but I'm actually saying it, but he's just giving you enough to.
I mean, there's a few things he's been very clear on. I mean, one I thought was quite striking was on collateral intrusion. He talked about collateral intrusion. Look, collateral intrusion is also for the target. The target of the undercover deployment also, it should be protected from collateral intrusion around areas that are not relevant to the tasking, and they don't seem to have understood that. He again, disagreed openly with the SDS guidelines, saying that they were wrong essentially on what they were saying about collateral intrusion. Which, he's certainly gone further than any other witness.
Like he picked up a point that McKinney said yesterday and really ran with. So McKinney did say, look, there's a whole issue with collateral intrusion. He tried to say, look, SDS, it's too broad and too difficult. And he's like, well, actually, no, there's a real way to deal. We have the professional ability to deal with this. But he does go further, and makes this point, and it's there for a reason. It's there to keep it all compliant with Data Protection, Human Rights Act, and that's quite a powerful bit of way to end the inquest. Like, if you're going to come back and say, yes, some of these operations were justified, blah blah blah, have to answer his points.
Yeah, I mean, what's missing, of course, is that what he's saying is that those things shouldn't be reported on, rather than that undercover officers shouldn't actually take part in family funerals or whatever else. And I think there's a real sort of disconnect there about it's what the reporting does, what the deployment does. And I think a lot of us are quite frustrated in the way that he's presenting these things as historical problems, which are all okay now, when we know full well that in terms of policing of protests, what that actually looks like in the current age. It's only a short break. We should probably head back in. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, whatever the distinction between long and short, just to answer your thing, I think there's something going on there about short-term deployments versus long-time. I think there's more to come.
Yeah. Just quickly, in the public gallery today, Jeremy Corbyn has joined us for some reason. He is a co-participant, so it's good to see him here. I tried to get him on one of these videos. He said maybe later. We'll see. But yeah, look out for that, baby. Thanks for joining.